The bright red emergency lights flashed throughout the U.S. horizon as the alarm blared. Dr. Samantha Miller rushed down the corridor, medical kit in one hand, her standard-issue pistol secured in the holster at her hip. The ship had received a distress call 30 minutes ago, and now they were preparing to board an alien vessel in distress. Medical team to Shuttle Bay 3. Captain Alan Hayes' voice echoed through the comms. Prepare for emergency response protocol. Samantha reached the shuttle bay where her team waited. Nurse Paul Carter checked supplies while medic Lisa Winters ran diagnostics on their portable medical scanner. Security Chief Eric Johnson stood with 4 armed officers, their faces serious. "What's the situation?" Samantha asked, securing her medical kit to her belt. Eric looked up from his tablet. "Unknown alien vessel. Heavy damage to their life support systems. Scans show approximately 30 life forms aboard, many with fading signatures." "Any idea who they are?" "First contact situation," Eric replied. "Nothing in our databases matches their ship design." Captain Hayes entered the shuttle bay, his uniform crisp despite the emergency. "Dr. Miller, your team has 15 minutes once aboard. Assess, stabilize, and evacuate any survivors you can. We're picking up another ship approaching. Could be whoever attacked them." The response shuttle launched smoothly from the horizon, crossing the void to the damaged alien vessel. Through the viewport, Samantha could see the strange ship, oval-shaped with crystalline structures that might once have been beautiful before being shattered by weapons fire. Their shuttle docked with a metallic clunk. The team moved efficiently, Eric's security officers taking point as they entered the alien ship. The air inside was thin and smelled of ozone and something sweet like burned sugar. They found the first aliens in what appeared to be their command center. Tall, slender beings with bluish skin and 4 arms lay scattered across the floor. Some moved weakly while others remained still. "Spread out, triage protocol," Samantha ordered, kneeling beside the closest alien who still showed signs of life. The alien's eyes, 3 of them arranged in a triangle, opened wide when it saw Samantha. It made chirping sounds that their translators couldn't process yet. Samantha scanned the alien with her medical device. Multiple internal injuries, blood loss, or whatever they have instead of blood. She worked quickly, applying emergency treatment while Paul and Lisa moved to other survivors. The aliens watched them with a mixture of relief and growing confusion. One alien, wearing ornate garments that suggested importance, lay against a damaged console. Its wounds were severe. Samantha could tell immediately this one wouldn't survive transport. She moved to it anyway, determined to ease its pain. "I'm Dr. Miller," she said gently, knowing her words weren't understood, but hoping her tone conveyed compassion. "I'm going to help you." The alien's 3 eyes blinked slowly. It raised one of its 4 hands weakly, pointing to Samantha's holstered pistol with obvious alarm. Eric approached, keeping his rifle lowered but ready. "Captain says we have 10 minutes left. That approaching ship has accelerated. Definitely not friendly." The dying alien suddenly convulsed. A small device on its chest glowed, and to Samantha's surprise, it spoke in halting English. "You? Heal. But weapon. Carry weapon." Samantha nodded. "Yes, I'm a doctor. And yes, I carry a weapon. All our medical personnel are combat trained." The alien's eyes widened further. "Impossible. Against sacred law." Before Samantha could ask what it meant, the ship shuddered violently. Eric's comm crackled. "Hostile ship approaching. They're charging weapons." Captain Hayes' voice was urgent. "Get our people and any survivors back now." The wounded alien grabbed Samantha's arm with surprising strength. "I am Zixela, diplomat of Valaxia. They are Kresnar, conquerors. They kill, healers first." Another explosion rocked the ship. Eric shouted orders to his team while Lisa and Paul prepared the stabilized aliens for transport. "We need to move," Samantha told Zixela. "Can we take you with us?" The alien shook its head. "Too late for me. But you're kind. Healers with weapons. Its voice was filled with wonder even as life faded from its eyes. "Why are your healers packing heat?" Before Samantha could answer, the ship rocked with another impact. The battle had begun. The survivors from the alien ship huddled in the medical bay of the U.S. horizon. 6 Valaxians had been rescued, all suffering from various injuries. They watched the human medical staff with a mixture of gratitude and unease. Every time Dr. Samantha Miller or her team touched their medical equipment with one hand and adjusted their weapons with the other, the aliens whispered among themselves. One Valaxian, who introduced himself as Kellinar, seemed less afraid than the others. His translator device worked better than Zixala's had. "Your people confuse us," Kellinar said as Samantha checked his bandages. "You heal, yet you carry death on your hip." Samantha glanced down at her sidearm. It's standard for all crew members, especially on away missions. We're explorers, but space is dangerous. In all the galaxy, healers are sacred, untouchable. They never carry weapons, Kellinar explained. It is the oldest law among civilized worlds. Captain Hayes entered the medical bay, nodding to the aliens before turning to Samantha. "How are our guests?" "Stable, but confused by our ways," she replied quietly. Hayes turned to the Valaxians. "We've sent a distress signal on frequencies your people might monitor. We believe the ship that attacked you has moved on, but we're maintaining alert status." Kellinar tilted his head. "Captain, please explain why your healers violate the sacred separation. Zixala died troubled by this." Hayes looked confused. "What separation? Healers heal. Warriors fight. The two paths must never cross," Kellinar stated as if reciting a well-known truth. "It is this way on all civilized worlds." Hayes sat down, showing respect by meeting the alien at eye level. "On Earth, our homeworld, we have a long history of combat medics, healers who go into battle to save lives." He gestured to a screen on the wall, which displayed historical images from Earth, Civil War doctors operating under fire, World War medics dragging wounded soldiers to safety, modern combat medics treating civilians in disaster zones. "Our ancient healer named Hippocrates said, 'First, do no harm, but sometimes you must defend your patients to uphold that oath,'" Hayes continued. "Our healers train to protect the wounded when necessary." The Valaxians watched the images with their 3 eyes wide. Kellinar seemed troubled. "The Kresner. They know most species follow the separation. It is why they target medical centers first," he said quietly. "They know healers cannot fight back." Nurse Paul entered the medical bay with a tablet. "Doctor, I've analyzed their biology more thoroughly. Their medical technology is actually more advanced than ours in several areas, but they have no concept of battlefield medicine." Lisa Winters joined them, bringing fresh supplies. "Their ships don't even have security personnel assigned to medical bays. It's like they never considered they'd need to defend their wounded." The ship suddenly rocked violently. Red alert sirens blared throughout the corridors. "Battle stations." Hayes' comm unit crackled. "Kresner vessel has returned with reinforcements. All hands prepare for potential boarding." The Valaxians trembled with fear. Kellinar grabbed Samantha's arm. "They will come for the wounded first. It is their way." Samantha looked at Paul and Lisa, who were already checking their sidearms while simultaneously preparing emergency medical kits. The practiced efficiency spoke of years of training for this exact scenario. "Not on my watch," Samantha said firmly. She turned to Hayes. "Captain, we'll secure the medical bay." Hayes nodded. "Security team is on the way, but they may be delayed if boarding occurs in multiple locations." "We'll hold until they arrive," Samantha assured him. After Hayes left, Samantha directed her team to move patients to more defensible positions. They set up barriers using supply cabinets and prepared emergency evacuation routes. Kellinar watched in astonishment. "You truly are different from any species we have encountered. On Earth, protecting the vulnerable is as sacred as healing them," Samantha explained while checking her medical scanner and weapon with equal attention. "Now let me show you where to take cover when they come." The ship rocked again, harder this time. The lights flickered momentarily. "They're boarding," Lisa confirmed, looking at the security feed. "Multiple breach points." "Remember your oath," Samantha told her team as they took up defensive positions around their patients. Kelnar's translator struggled with the emotions in his voice. Zix Ella's last words make sense now. "Your healers pack heat. It changes everything." The lights in the medical bay dimmed as the U.S. horizon switched to emergency power. Through the reinforced doors, Samantha and her team could hear the sounds of fighting. Occasional weapons fire echoed through the corridors, growing louder with each passing minute. "They're getting closer," Paul said, adjusting the makeshift barrier they had created from medical cabinets and equipment. He kept his voice calm, but his eyes betrayed his concern. Samantha checked on the Valaxian patients one more time. They huddled behind the strongest section of the barrier, their blue skin now pale with fear. Kelnar watched as Samantha moved from healing mode to combat readiness in seconds. "The Kreznar are relentless hunters," Kelnar warned. "They stand over 8 feet tall with natural armor. Our weapons barely hurt them." "Do they have any weaknesses?" Lisa asked, preparing another batch of emergency stimulants. She had positioned herself where she could quickly reach any patient who might need immediate care. Kelnar hesitated. "Their neck joints. The plating there is thinner, but it's hard to hit such a small target." The comms crackled with static. Eric's voice came through broken and urgent. "Medical. Under heavy attack. Can't reach your position. Multiple hostiles. Heading your way." Samantha acknowledged the message, then turned to her team. "Remember your training. We protect our patients first, ourselves second." A massive impact shook the medical bay doors. Metal groaned as something powerful struck it again and again. The Valaxians trembled, huddling closer together. "They smell our wounded," Kelnar whispered. "They always go for the weakest first." The doors finally gave way with a screech of tearing metal. 3 enormous insectoid creatures forced their way through the gap. They stood tall on 6 legs, with upper limbs that ended in wicked claws. Their heads featured multiple eyes and mandibles that clicked together menacingly. The lead Kreznar scanned the room, its gaze settling on the wounded Valaxians. It made a chittering sound that might have been laughter. "Easy prey," it said through some kind of translator. "Always the same. The healers cower, the wounded die." Samantha stepped forward, her stance firm, weapon raised. "Not today." The Kreznar seemed momentarily confused by the sight of medical personnel with weapons. That hesitation gave Samantha and her team the opportunity they needed. They fired in unison. Their shots struck with precision, targeting the weak points Kelnar had mentioned. The lead Kreznar staggered backward, green fluid leaking from its neck joint. "Impossible," it hissed. "Healers do not fight." "Human healers do," Samantha replied, adjusting her aim for another shot. More Kreznar pushed through the damaged doors. Paul and Lisa maintained their positions, alternating between firing at the invaders and checking on their patients. One of the Valaxians began to shake violently, entering some kind of shock. Without lowering her weapon, Lisa slid to the patient's side, one-handed administering a stabilizing agent while keeping her pistol trained on the nearest Kreznar. The aliens watched in astonishment as the human medical team seamlessly switched between combat and healing. Never before had they seen such duality of purpose. "Their coordination is impressive," a Kreznar commander hissed, entering the medical bay. Taller than the others, its armor was adorned with what looked like trophies from previous conquests. But futile. The commander fired an energy weapon that sent Samantha flying backward into a medical cabinet. She hit hard, slumping to the floor momentarily dazed. The Kreznar commander advanced toward her. Paul and Lisa continued firing, but more Kreznar were pouring in, forcing them to retreat closer to their patients. The situation was becoming desperate. Samantha struggled to her feet, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. The Kreznar commander loomed over her. "Your species is unusual," it said, mandibles clicking. Healers who fight. An interesting novelty, but it changes nothing. Samantha's hand found a surgical laser tool on the floor beside her. Not a weapon, but in desperate times, anything could serve. I think you're wrong, she said, gripping the tool tightly. It changes everything. From behind the barriers, Kelnar watched in awe as Dr. Miller stood her ground against the towering Kreznar. Behind him, the dying Zixella, who they had fought dead on the alien ship, but had been barely alive when brought aboard, opened his 3 eyes weakly. Watch, Zixella whispered. History changes today. The Kreznar commander towered over Samantha, its mandibles clicking in what seemed like amusement. Samantha gripped the surgical laser tool tightly, her mind racing through options. As a medical instrument, the laser wasn't designed as a weapon, but she knew enough about anatomy to make it count. Your species intrigues me, the commander said, its translator making the words sound flat and cold. Perhaps we will study you after we conquer your worlds. Samantha watched the commander's movements carefully. Many have tried to conquer Earth. None have succeeded. The commander lunged forward with surprising speed. Samantha rolled to the side, feeling the rush of air as massive claws swept past her face. She activated the surgical laser and slashed at the Kreznar's leg joint. The beam cut through the thinner exoskeleton there, and green fluid spurted from the wound. The commander shrieked in pain and rage. You know our weaknesses. Across the room, Paul and Lisa continued their desperate defense. Paul fired his weapon with one hand while using his body to shield an unconscious Phylaxian. Lisa had run out of ammunition and now wielded a metal stand as a makeshift weapon, keeping the Kreznar at bay. We need backup, Paul shouted into his comm unit, but only static answered. The Kreznar commander recovered quickly and grabbed Samantha by the throat, lifting her off the ground. Enough games. Tell your healers to surrender, and we may spare some of your patients. Samantha struggled for breath, her feet dangling. Through darkening vision, she saw the Valaxians watching in horror. Among them, the weakened form of Zixella stirred, raising a 4-fingered hand. Doctor, Zixella called weakly, his translator crackling. Their central nerve cluster, behind the headplate, pressed hard where the segments meet. The commander turned, surprised by the voice. You still live? Not for long, diplomat. That moment of distraction was all Samantha needed. She drove the surgical laser into the exact spot Zixella had indicated, where the armor plates met behind the Kreznar's head. She pressed the activation button, sending the beam deep into the soft tissue. The commander's grip loosened immediately. Its many limbs trembled, and it crashed to the floor, twitching uncontrollably. The other Kreznar paused their attack, chittering in alarm at seeing their leader fall. Samantha staggered to her feet, breathing hard, and retrieved her weapon from where it had fallen. Your commander is paralyzed, not dead, she called to the remaining Kreznar. I can treat him, or I can ensure he never moves again. Your choice. The Kreznar warriors looked at each other, clearly confused by this situation. Never before had they faced healers who could fight so effectively, much less negotiate from a position of strength. The standoff was broken by the sound of heavy weapons fire from the corridor. Security Chief Eric Johnson burst through the doorway with his team, weapons blazing. The remaining Kreznar retreated, dragging their paralyzed commander with them. Sorry we're late, Eric said, securing the damaged doorway. They hit us everywhere at once. Samantha didn't waste time on replies. She rushed to check on her patients and team. Paul had a nasty gash on his arm, but was still tending to a Valaxian. Lisa had a possible concussion, but refused to stop working. We'd held, Lisa said with tired pride. No patients lost. Samantha made her way to Zixella, whose condition had worsened during the battle. The Valaxian diplomat was barely clinging to life, but his 3 eyes focused clearly on Samantha. You fought. For us, Zixella whispered. And still, you heal. 2 roles. As one. It's what we do, Samantha replied simply, scanning his failing systems. Thank you for telling me their weakness. Zixala's hand trembled as it reached for Samantha's arm. "Must tell you something important. About Kreznar. About Galaxy." The ship rocked from another impact. Captain Hayes's voice came over the comm system. "All hands, prepare for emergency jump. We cannot win this battle conventionally." Samantha held Zixala's hand. "Say your strength. You can tell me after we escape." Zixala's eyes blinked slowly. "No time. Later. Must know why you are different. Why your healers fight. The Kreznar, their entire conquest strategy." The lights flickered as the ship prepared for its emergency jump. Around them, the medical team and security officers worked to stabilize the wounded for what would likely be a rough escape. "Tell me," Samantha said, leaning closer to the dying alien. "I'm listening." The U.S. horizon lurched as it made the emergency jump away from the Kreznar ships. The sudden acceleration pushed everyone against their seats and beds. In the medical bay, Samantha braced herself, while keeping a firm but gentle hold on Zixala's frail body. When the ship stabilized, a tense quiet settled over the medical bay. The wounded Valaxians looked around nervously, as if expecting the Kreznar to appear again at any moment. Paul and Lisa moved among the patients, checking that no one had been harmed during the sudden jump. "We're clear," Captain Hayes announced over the comm system. "The Kreznar vessels aren't following. Good work, everyone." Samantha turned her attention back to Zixala. The alien diplomat's breathing had become shallow, and the blue tint of his skin had faded to a pale gray. The medical scanner showed his life signs dropping steadily. There was nothing more she could do except make him comfortable. "You wanted to tell me something," she reminded him gently. "About the Kreznar." Zixala's three eyes struggled to focus. "For centuries, they have conquered dozens of species. Always. Same strategy." He paused, gathering his fading strength. Kelnar moved closer, placing a four-fingered hand on his friend's shoulder. "First attack. Always targets medical centers," Zixala continued. "All species in Galactic Council follow sacred law. Healers never fight. Healers never armed." Samantha began to understand. "So they deliberately target the defenseless first." Zixala nodded weakly. "Healers die. Wounded die. Morale breaks. Quick surrender follows." Eric, who had stayed in the medical bay to provide security, frowned. "That's not just a military tactic. That's systematic exploitation of a cultural belief. 27 species in Galactic Council," Zixala struggled to continue. "All follow separation of healer and warrior. All have fallen or paid tribute to Kreznar. Because of this." From a hidden pocket in his tattered clothing, Zixala pulled out a small crystal-like object. It glowed with a soft, blue light. "Data crystal," he explained. "Coordinates to Galactic Council. Records of all Kreznar conquests. Take this to Council." Samantha accepted the crystal carefully. "We will." "But why?" Lisa asked, joining them. "Why is this separation of healers and warriors so absolute for your people?" Zixala's breathing became more labored. "Ancient wars. Too terrible. Healers were targeted because they could return warriors to battle. Galaxy nearly destroyed itself. Peace treaty created 10,000 years ago. Sacred separation to prevent total war. But on Earth," Samantha explained, "we learned different lessons. Our healers go into battle not to make war worse, but to save lives. Any lives they can reach." "Your way. Better," Zixala whispered. "Kreznar exploit our way. For centuries, we could not understand why they always won." The medical scanner beeped a warning. Zixala was slipping away quickly now. "The question that puzzled me when we met," he said, his voice barely audible. "Why are there healers packing heat? Now I understand. Your kind evolved differently. You protect while you heal." Kelnar leaned closer to his dying friend. "What should we do, Zixala?" "Learn from humans," came the faint reply. "Council must see must change. Old ways. Let Kreznar conquer us. Zixella turned his gaze to Samantha one last time. Promise me. Show counsel. Your dual nature, healer and protector, could save galaxy. I promise, Samantha said, squeezing his hand gently. With what seemed like great effort, Zixella lifted his head slightly. Tell them. Dying revelation. From Valaxian diplomat. Humans different. Special. They're healers. Pack heat. And this changes everything. His final words faded to a whisper, and the light in his 3 eyes dimmed. The medical scanner flatlined, its soft tone marking the passage of the Valaxian diplomat. Kelnar performed a quick ritual gesture over his friend's body. The other Valaxians followed suit, their movements solemn and respectful. He was our greatest diplomat, Kelnar said quietly, and his final diplomatic act may be his most important. Captain Hayes entered the medical bay, surveying the aftermath of the battle. Dr. Miller, what did he mean? What changes everything? Samantha held up the glowing data crystal. This does, Captain. And apparently, so do we. 2 weeks later, the U.S. horizon approached a massive space station shaped like a wheel with spokes extending from a central hub. According to the data crystal Zixella had given them, this was the headquarters of the Galactic Council, where representatives from 27 spacefaring civilizations gathered. Captain Hayes stood on the bridge, watching the structure grow larger on the view screen. They granted us permission to dock. Dr. Miller, you'll join me in the delegation. Samantha nodded. Since the battle with the Kreznar, she had spent much time with the Valaxian survivors, learning about the Galactic Council and its customs. Kelnar had become especially helpful, preparing the humans for what to expect. Remember, Kelnar warned as they prepared to leave the ship, many council members will be disturbed by your medical practices. The separation of healer and warrior is not just tradition. It is the foundation of their moral code. The human delegation consisted of Captain Hayes, Dr. Miller, Security Chief Eric Johnson, and the 5 surviving Valaxians. They were met at the docking bay by tall, elegant beings with features that reminded Samantha of Earth's deer. Large eyes, graceful movements, and a calm demeanor. I am Thelian, Council Greeter, one of them said through a translator device. The High Council has assembled to hear your testimony about the Kreznar attack. Thelian led them through wide corridors bustling with different alien species. Samantha noticed how the aliens gave the humans curious or sometimes worried looks. Word of their arrival had clearly spread. They entered a vast circular chamber. 27 elevated platforms formed a ring, each holding representatives of different species. In the center was a speaking area where the delegation was directed to stand. The head of the council, a being with tentacle-like appendages and skin that shifted colors like an octopus, spoke first. I am First Speaker Orlox. The council recognizes the Valaxian survivors and the human visitors. The hesitation was slight but noticeable. Kelnar stepped forward. Honored council, we come bearing grave news. Diplomat Zixella gave his life to bring you this information. He held up the data crystal, which was taken by an attendant and inserted into a console. Images filled the air above them. Records of Kreznar attacks spanning centuries, always following the same pattern. Medical centers targeted first, healers killed, wounded left to die, populations demoralized, and quickly conquered. Murmurs spread through the council chamber as the evidence mounted. Many representatives appeared disturbed or even distressed. When the presentation ended, First Speaker Orlox's skin had darkened to a deep blue. This pattern is troubling. But what solution do you propose? The separation of healer and warrior has been our way for 10,000 years. It ended the ancient wars. Captain Hayes stepped forward. With respect, First Speaker, we propose a new way. On Earth, our healers are also protectors. A representative with insect-like features buzzed angrily. Blasphemy. Healers who kill violate the most sacred covenant. We do not kill because we want to. Samantha spoke up, her voice firm but respectful. We fight because we must protect those who cannot protect themselves. Our first duty is to save lives." She explained the concept of combat medics, battlefield surgeons, and the Geneva Convention, how Earth had developed rules that allowed healers to bear arms solely for defense of themselves and their patients. "The Krasner exploit your sacred law," she continued. "They target healers first because they know they cannot fight back. We survived their attack because our medical team could defend our patients." The council chamber erupted in debate. Some representatives appeared outraged, others curious, a few thoughtful. A reptilian counselor raised a clawed hand for silence. "This human concept is unorthodox. But consider how many of our worlds have fallen to the Krasnar. How many healers and patients have died because they could not defend themselves." First Speaker Orlox's skin rippled with patterns of gold and green. "The Council will need time to consider this. It challenges 10 millennia of galactic law." Hayes nodded respectfully. "We understand. But while you debate, the Krasnar continue their conquests." "Perhaps," Kellner suggested, "a demonstration would be helpful. Let the humans show how their healers can both protect and save lives without compromising their ethical standards." Orlox considered this, tentacles twisting thoughtfully. "A demonstration. Yes. Show us this human way." 6 months later, Dr. Samantha Miller stood in a large training room on the Galactic Council station. Before her were 30 aliens from 15 different species, all wearing the universal medical symbol along with simplified versions of Earth combat gear. They had just completed the first-ever Galactic Combat Medic training program. "Today marks a new beginning," Samantha addressed the group. "You have learned to honor your healing oaths, while also protecting those under your care. This balance is not easy, but it is necessary." The alien medics stood tall, their postures showing a new confidence that hadn't been there when training began. Many council members had initially opposed the program, calling it a corruption of sacred traditions. But after 3 more Krasnar attacks on undefended medical facilities, resistance had weakened. Captain Hayes entered the training room with First Speaker Orlox, whose skin now displayed patterns of blue and gold, colors that Samantha had learned indicated cautious optimism. "The reports from the training program are impressive," Orlox said, his translator conveying a tone of surprise. Many council members remained skeptical that healers could maintain their ethical standards while learning defensive combat. "The key is in how we frame their mission," Samantha explained. "They never attack. They defend. They never seek to kill, only to neutralize threats to their patients." One of the alien medics, a Valaxian named Mora, stepped forward. "When the Krasnar attacked my home colony, I watched helplessly as they slaughtered my patients. I vowed never to feel that helpless again." Alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. Orlox's skin flashed to urgent red as he received information through his communication device. "Krasnar vessels have been detected approaching Valaxian Colony 7, he announced. "They follow their usual pattern, small fleet, targeting medical facilities first." Captain Hayes turned to Samantha. "Your graduates ready for a field test." Samantha looked at the newly trained combat medics. Their faces showed determination rather than fear. "They're ready." Within an hour, 3 council ships carrying the combat medic graduates departed for the Valaxian colony. Samantha, who had been granted special advisor status, joined them aboard the lead vessel. "The Krasnar expect the same easy victory they've always had," she told the graduates during the journey. "They don't know what they're about to face." When they reached the colony, the Krasnar attack was already underway. Following their standard strategy, enemy forces had surrounded the main medical center, expecting to eliminate the healers first. The council ships deployed the combat medics directly to the medical center. Using their new skills, the medic team created defensive positions around the wounded, just as Samantha had taught them. When the Krasnar broke through the doors, they found not cowering healers, but a coordinated defense force. The aliens who had once been helpless victims now fought with purpose and precision, targeting the Krasnar's weak points while continuing to treat the injured. From the command ship, Samantha and Captain Hayes watched the sensor readings with Orlocks and other council representatives. Remarkable, Orlok said it as the data showed the Kresnar forces retreating in confusion. They expected easy prey but found defenders. Word spread quickly through the Kresnar fleet. For the first time in their long history of conquest, their primary strategy had failed. Medical personnel were fighting back, protecting their patients and themselves with surprising effectiveness. The Kresnar commander sent a message before retreating. What manner of healers are these? This violates all known galactic protocols. 3 days later, when Samantha and the others returned to the council station, they were met with a hero's welcome. News of the successful defense had spread throughout council space. First Speaker Orlox addressed the full council with Samantha and her graduates beside him. For 10,000 years, we believed the separation of healer and protector was necessary for galactic peace. Today we recognize a new truth, that sometimes, to truly heal, one must also protect. The council formally adopted what they called the Miller Doctrine, the principle that medical personnel had both the right and duty to defend their patients when under attack. As Samantha watched the council members vote to implement the new doctrine across all 27 civilizations, she thought of Zixala's dying words. "Why are there healers packing heat?" she whispered to herself. "Because sometimes that's what it takes to save lives."